has been borne out in the decisions of yesterday and today in the Supreme Court. I profess today that I will no longer say a pledge of allegiance to a republic that is not there any longer. So as I say pledge of allegiance to this flag, I will remember always those who fell in favor of this flag and those who will fall in favor. But today and from this day forward, I will omit the words "and to the republic for which it stands," because that republic no longer lives. Today, we have been certifiably told by the Supreme Court that that republic is dead. And folks, I do not believe it revives. And so let's say the pledge. You do what you will, but my voice will not be saying pledge of allegiance to the republic. I will skip the words "to the republic for which it stands." So I'm asking you, with the debate that happens afterwards and the words that we have, open mic, that you consider seriously what my intent is. So let's do the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic which we used to have, one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And it was awkward. You may be seated. But sometimes Dan said I'm a teacher, and I said, well, Dan's a teacher. Dan's a professional teacher. And he begged with me to make this a teaching event. I honestly was going to take the flag down because I don't feel like pretending anymore. When you have heard me say a lot that when I say pledge of allegiance to that flag, I always remember those who fell in favor of that flag. And I also remember those who we will call on and send in our name. Sometimes we send in silence. Those who have yet to fall in favor. That's who I remember when I say pledge to that flag. I don't say pledge to a government. We have seen today, yesterday, and this week how government will fail us. We have tried for the last 7 years to reach for remedy. We thought we could do this in the Republican Party, and I so much respect the effort of all of you folks. I think of you, Joe. Joe is like a worker ant. He's just willing not to think about it, just to do whatever needs to be done. But he knows for the right cause. There's so many people like that who have been trying to reach for remedy in the Republican Party. I gave up on the party.
They keep knocking my hill down, but I keep building it back up.
The ant hill. I am thoroughly disappointed. I'm not discouraged, I'm angry. Because here's what's going to happen, folks. In the next week, I am going to have a family reunion. I'm going to go get to see all of my grandchildren together. I'm going to get to face those little fellas and gals. And I'm going to take them fishing. I'm going to take them to Yorktown. I'm going to take them to where their mom and dads were when they were their age, down in Hampton, Virginia. That's where we lived. We have pictures of our kids on those howitzers at Yorktown battlefields. We're going to put our grandchildren on there, and we're going to match them up, and we're going to make a gift. You know, those howitzers mean a lot. That battlefield means a lot. And those kids are going to hear the history of the sacrifice of that Revolutionary War. You know, we don't talk about that anymore. Tim was just telling me that the Senate in the state of Michigan has just voted not to teach the Constitution. The Democrat Senate. Excuse me. Let me clear this up. I said it wrong. That all Democrats in Senate. Now, this needs to be verified because Tim said it.
I can go get it. I'll be right back in about 2 minutes.
That was a joke, Tim.
Okay.
Okay? It needs to be verified because Tim said it. Okay. No, I don't want you to go get it.
Okay.
I want folks to investigate it. So I'm giving the information out there. It was told me today that the Democrats in the Senate, without voted unanimously, the Democrats, not to teach the Constitution and the history of the Constitution of this country. You know what? They pledged an oath of affirmation to that Constitution. And they voted not to teach it. And they're going to get away with it. Folks, you have often heard me say that the Democrats are willingly suspending the disbelief. You know, it's not them, it's us too. Not us. Because you folks challenged me to investigate my message. But when Ted Cruz was not held accountable, and I want to get into this discussion, when he was not held accountable for his vote for fast track, and he's being given cover because he changed his vote and said, I'm not for this treaty, no, I'm not for this treaty. But let me tell you something. He voted to allow it to come out of committee down to the floor. And then when it did come out of committee down to the floor, he voted for it. So he was like Al Gore. He was against it before he was for it. He was for it before he was against it twice. But here's what needs to be clearly understood about that vote, and it ties into the Republic being dead. Here's what needs to be clearly understood why we need to challenge Tea Party folks who aren't holding Ted Cruz accountable. That was a fast track vote. Now what fast track is, folks, is a procedural thing in the Senate. And the Senate, by law, is able to do procedural things. Unless it's specified in the Constitution that you are required to have a supermajority for a thing such as a treaty. A supermajority is 67 votes. Fast track, if it were anything other than a treaty between nations, fast track would be fine to vote for. I might oppose it, but it wouldn't be a constitutional violation. What Ted Cruz did was voted for fast track on a treaty. Giving the president fast track authority means this: up or down vote, no amendments, fine, no problem. The biggest thing that's not being talked about this whole fast track authority is it only requires 51 votes in the Senate once it comes up. How can we not hold Ted Cruz, a constitutional Tea Party person, accountable for not understanding that? He understands it, I guarantee you he does. Our republic is dead. Because we no longer will require. The legislature will not do anything about the Supreme Court. You say, well, they can't do anything. Yes, they can. The Republicans have control of the House, and they should defund this illegal Obamacare. It should be defunded. John Roberts, and I don't care what the consequence is. The reason they won't do it is because they want the jobs. They won't suffer the negative because they want to get reelected. And they fear that if they defund Obamacare, that it's going to be such a pushback. But see, the constitutional principle here is that John Roberts changed the legislation twice. A Supreme Court Chief Justice. And let me tell you something. This person, you know, he's got a lot of little letters behind his name, and he went to more than a drywall school, I guarantee you that. You know what he did? He went to college, and then he went to more college. He would understand, and I guarantee you he would know how to quote the Oath of Affirmation. Wouldn't you say so? The Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice, he should know that. Do you remember what happened when he swore in Obama? Does anybody remember?
Swear him in twice.
Why did he have to swear him in twice? Why did this highly educated person forget the Oath of Affirmation? I have my feelings on it, but the one thing I know for sure, he didn't forget it. The one thing I know for sure in my heart, that was a staged event where that swearing in could be held 1 minute before midnight, like constitutional law had to be, without cameras and without us knowing what Bible he put his hand on. We don't know it. I'm only saying this, we don't know it. And I'm only saying this, John Roberts did forget to pledge the Oath of Affirmation. He didn't forget it. Never been done in the history of this country. He didn't forget it. Now we're finding out that John Roberts, who I'm openly saying is a traitor to this country, to the Constitution, he is a traitor to this Constitution. He has caused the Republic to die. We still had hope before he changed the legislation and called it a tax instead of what was it? He called it a tax instead of a duty. The language in the Constitution was different than tax. I forget what, but he called it a tax. Therefore, IRS had the authority and it passed. But Obama couldn't call it a tax because he knew it wouldn't get by the people. They knew it wouldn't get by the people. John Roberts did that. That was a while back. And we gave him a pass on that one. We did. He's still a conservative chief justice. But I'm not giving him a pass on what he did yesterday. Because what happened yesterday is unbelievably bad for this country. And if it is, we don't hold him accountable. If it is, we don't make a statement by acknowledging, along with the Pledge of Allegiance to this wonderful flag, the best, not government, the best country ever in the history of the entire world. We say Pledge of Allegiance to those who fell in favor for that flag. And I often tell you that that's what I'm thinking when I say it. I can no longer in good conscience have the second statement go along with it, and to the republic for which it stands, because I know now it has been confirmed that the republic isn't there anymore. So at least in my protest, I will omit the words, and to the republic for which it stands. And I would hope that people who want to criticize that will at least talk to me about it. And quite honestly, I really don't care if they understand. Because here's the problem we're having, folks. We are sleeping as a country. And what happens when you do that? Okay, I'm sorry for that, but I've always wanted to do it. It makes an example. It wakes people up. That's what it does.
If you give them a heart attack, it's your responsibility.
It is. But I use that for this analogy. I scared some folks here just now when I did that. If we don't impact this country with some statements that are going to wake people up, we have no chance. The Tea Party is not holding Ted Cruz accountable for that vote. I called Theron, and I wanted to talk. He said no, I was no longer banned. He told me that myself, to my face. He would let me call. I just haven't cared to, until he kept protecting and painting Ted Cruz in a good light simply because he voted against the treaty the third time. So I wanted to call up and talk about fast track and the fact that Ted Cruz is the reason that 51 votes can now give advice and consent to that trade agreement. Ted Cruz is the reason for that, folks. 51 votes, in violation of the U.S. Constitution. And so I wanted to take my hand on the radio and smack the table. I wanted to do that, and I couldn't do it because the Tea Party isn't aware. Theron has no clue that this is what happened. I'll bet you right now that he does not realize that 51 votes can pass that treaty because of Ted Cruz. It is absolutely clear that that's what happened.
So was Ted Cruz too little, too late?
No, he wasn't up front quick enough. Not too little, too late. You're giving him a pass there. Ted Cruz is a constitutional lawyer. Ted Cruz is not a drywall guy. I am offended that a person such as I have a grasp on this that the other Tea Party folks aren't even talking about. It's not whether or not you agree with this treaty. I don't know if I do. I'm like Rand Paul. Rand Paul says, I don't know if I'm for it or against it. I haven't read it. But here's the problem. The vote isn't for the treaty. The vote is for authorizing it to be passed on 51 votes instead of 67. And Ted Cruz allowed that to come out of committee, down to the floor, and when it came down to the floor, he voted for it before he was against it. Tim?
Is the Tea Party Alliance talking about it?
I don't know.
Or should we send Little Run people with the Blue Water and the Canton Rebel bus out near Lansing every month?
You go.
Who are we sending?
You go. You go.
Will we authorize him?
Maybe me and Dan should go.
And you know what? What is your message, Tim? When you go, what is your message? Is your message that Ted Cruz authorized 51 votes in the Senate to a treaty which is abhorrent to the Constitution? Is that going to be your message?
No, the message would be what your message is.
That's what my message was, Tim. You're not listening. That's what it was.
But are they listening?
They're not listening. That's what I'm saying. Dave Rome wouldn't let me come on his radio show. He said no. After no longer I was banned. That's supposed to be open mic, you know. We had a few head collisions a few years back. I did.
So
Yeah. He got Ted and Nancy's Excellent Adventure. He knows exactly what I was talking about. By the way, folks, that piece I wrote, Ted and Nancy's Excellent Adventure, if you Google it, Google Ted and Nancy's Excellent Adventure. And if this goes on the YouTube, which Mike sometimes puts it on, please Google Ted and Nancy's Excellent Adventure. It'll come up number one. Number one. That means it's being read a lot. Nationally. And I hold Ted Cruz accountable. And what I said, Ted and Nancy's Excellent Adventure has turned into their bogus journey. The two movies with Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, if you folks know. I never watched them, I only know about them. But it is kind of a good analogy to what's happened. Ted Cruz is our Tea Party darling. He was everything we had hoped for. And I was too. I was supporting him. How in the world could he sidestep with his understanding of the Constitution? I'm asking you to consider this. And folks, if you're hearing this on YouTube, I'm asking you to consider this. How in the world could Ted Cruz, understanding the Constitution the way he does, authorize fast track, which authorizes 51 votes instead of 67 to pass an international treaty? Are we going to willingly suspend our disbelief, like I accuse the Democrats of doing? I'm not going to. Because I make the accusation to people who are sleeping, who sinned in silence, these young men and women, to go to a place of hell. If there were a hell on earth, that's where it would be. We're going to, on the 17th, we're going to listen to a young man named John Tomlinson. And I'm going to tell you something, if there's a dry eye in this house when his story is told, I will be amazed. Because he is living proof of what I've been saying for the last 7 years. I got involved in the Republican Party, in the Tea Party initially, then in the Republican Party, because I thought, I really did, I thought that we could bring some remedy to the hellacious policies that this government has had. And I never really understood what they were before I understood what the petrodollar bargain was about. Until I understood, and you hear me talk about it an awful lot, but I think it's the most relevant thing we can be talking about. Because if we continue to send our young men and women over there to protect a bargain that is going to fail, we're mercenarying our military, sending them into places that even God wouldn't have them there. To protect a bargain, because what's happening in every place that we're brought down, the dictators, the secular dictators that we once supported, turned around and didn't sell their oil in US dollars anymore. I got to tell you something, folks, and hear me clearly. We knew he had, listen, we knew he had weapons of mass destruction. John Tomlinson can prove that we knew he had them. John Tomlinson was ordered by his commanders to blow up 40, he says between 35 and 40, I'll use the high number, 40 warehouses the size of Sam's Club, full of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. You want to know why I'm so angry? I'm going to tell you. And John will verify this on the 17th. And we're going to do promo, we're going to do flyers, and I want this place packed. Because I'm tired of pretending that the Republic is still there. I'm going to hold government accountable for the sending of these young men and women. John Tomlinson just told me, sitting right here a couple of days ago, he said, Dennis, we were ordered to have a gate and not let people go back into their homes where these warehouses were. They couldn't pass through the gate. They were protecting them from going back into their homes. Because you see, Saddam Hussein was storing them just like they do in civilian areas so that they know they're not going to be attacked. So these people didn't, folks, they didn't understand so much. All they want to do is want to go home, want to take their kids. and their grandkids. Maybe they had a family reunion planned. Who knows? All they did was want to go home. But we were holding them at bay with the military. Wouldn't let them pass through the gate because it was unsafe. But when the order came, and you listen to this, you will understand why I'm so angry. When the order came to blow those weapons of mass destruction up, which John Tomlinson verifies, United States was on those weapons. The name United States was on those weapons. He will verify that. When he was given that order, he said we had to run. We had to go 25 miles away from the place where we had the gate. The gate was 10 miles from detonation. So we had to get within 35 miles away. You know when they no longer held the gate, you know what the people did? Imagine what those people did. They went toward their homes. All of the protection we were giving those folks vanquished because we had to get 35 miles away from detonation. But the people that lived there were heading back toward their homes. That's all they had. Then the order came, blow them up. On the 17th, there will be no more important meeting that we can ever have or ever have had than that night. Because it goes to the point of all the lies that we've been told by government. It goes to the point of why John Roberts lies. It goes to the point of why Ted Cruz would do, let me think of the right word. It's not going to come to me. Why he would agree to do such a thing. It goes to the point of why we will authorize a treaty of international courts. And I'm going to tell you, we don't know that if a pastor is accused of not marrying a gay couple, and we call it religious liberty, we don't know for sure that an international court will not try that based on this treaty. You don't know for sure. You know why you don't know for sure? Nobody's read it. That's why I did the analogy between Ted and Nancy. We've got to pass it so we can read it, know what's in it. Ted did the same thing. He didn't say it. Nancy, there was no accountability for Nancy saying it, and we got Obamacare. If there's no accountability for Ted Cruz voting to have 51 votes instead of 67, which is, the Founding Fathers are turning over in their graves if you can do that. If you can do that. They would be. Because they put that protection, that was a supermajority protection for you and me. That there would be no international treaty bargained behind smoke-filled rooms, and one side, Republicans, Democrats, or Independents, whoever happened to gain the authority of the White House, could go over it and adopt supermajority in the Senate. That was a protection given us. You know, the 17th Amendment took a lot of that away from us. That's really when the Republic died. But we weren't willing to look at that and consider it. We have believed erroneously that we had a republic to protect. I will continue, and I had a serious discussion with Mike and Dan before this meeting started. I was really angry enough to take this flag down and wrap it up into a proper place of honor and put under it in memory of. That's what I was going to do. But Dan and Mike caused me, they didn't make me, but they caused me to rethink my message. I will always pledge allegiance to the memory of those who fell in favor of it. It's not going to be the government of this country. I don't pledge allegiance to that. I hold them in contempt, especially this week. I hold Ted Cruz in contempt. He's contemptuous. He's contemptuous to the Constitution. Come out and tell me why. They won't. If you want to beat me up on it, but don't tell me I can't say it on your radio show. Because that smacks like Obama to me. I had something to say, and I was denied the right to say it. I don't have a right on his radio show. This is true. He can say it, but he can no longer say to me, at least, that he wants the truth out. Truth, justice, and the American way. Daron does not want the truth. Maybe he thinks we can't handle it, but I guarantee you I can handle it. Ted Cruz needs to be held accountable. And if the Tea Party keeps supporting him, they're going to, as much as my voice is heard, I'm going to call them out on it. Because Tim made a point, Dan made a point. We need to go to them and tell them, talk to them about it, other Tea Party leaders. And my answer, no. Why is it a drywall guy can understand this and all these people with education and college degrees, they're not seeing this? Am I wrong, folks? Somebody out here tell me I'm wrong about what Ted Cruz did. He took a 67 supermajority to ratify, not to ratify, but to give advice and consent that the president has to do before he ratifies. He took that 67 votes, I said percent, but I meant votes, supermajority, and rendered it down with fast track authority to 51 votes. Tell me I'm wrong.
It's despotism, what they're doing.
Somebody tell me I'm wrong and then prove it, because I would love to be wrong on this.
You're right. You're right. You're right. It's absolute despotism.
Why is it that Dennis is the only one talking about this, folks?
Yes. You wanted a chance to tell the public on the radio. I'm sorry, I'm in
Yeah, no, it's good. This is what I want tonight. Tonight, when you have something to say, you say it.
You wanted a chance to say this publicly on the radio to educate as many people as you could.
Yeah.
And then I'm going back to what has been proposed, that you speak to other leaders. Why are you saying no when you have a chance to educate them? Are you just mad because they don't get it like you do? Well, maybe they need a little help in that direction. There's so much coming at us.
I know, Linda.
So they can educate others.
I am disappointed. I am disappointed that they are so willing to.
Well, don't come at it that way. Just come at it at the fact that they don't understand, and you're going to try and help them understand.
These are constitutionalists. These are folks.
You
know, I will do it. I will
it.
do it, but let me tell you what's going to happen, okay? Because I've done it before.
But you still put it in your head, and they can't get it out.
That's what I'm trying to do with the messaging that I have. That's what I'm trying to do. I will go anywhere anybody wants to have me. I will go upon invitation. You want me to come? Anybody? Anybody who's hearing this message, if you want me to come and you want to beat me up on holding Ted Cruz accountable, I'll come and I'll take your arrows. I'll bring Dan to stand right behind you. Tim's got, Linda, that's good advice, and I appreciate your soul in that advice because I know it comes from deep. Tim's got a question.
I know people like Tim Keller and the Blue Water Tea Party will listen, and I talked to Sharon Lolio today about what happened with the gay marriage. The AG's office, she said they're very worried about our pastors now in Michigan. Very worried about, it'll be like Canada, where the Canadian Mounties can come in and arrest pastors in Canada. We got to protect them, and I asked her about a Pastor Protection Act like Texas has, and she said, Tim, I don't know what Bill's going to do, but Bill loves it when Dennis calls, I said, well, we should have Bill here, and she said, have Dennis call Bill, because Bill will come and talk to the
Let me explain something to you.
Bill who?
Bill Schuette. I had a conversation with Bill Schuette before he went to argue this case before the Supreme Court. You know, it strokes my ego a little bit to tell you that Bill Schuette's a friend of mine and that he hears me. But beyond feeling good about that, you need to know that that's so. And it is so that he will come. It is so that I advised him that the Supreme Court was going to do exactly what they did. It is so that I said to him, the thing that I said in my message is that compelled speech is a violation of religious liberty. Compelled speech is a violation of the First Amendment. And Bill Schuette absolutely understands this, but it didn't make the case for the Supreme Court. What the Supreme Court now has authorized, and this is why Bill Schuette is very concerned about this. This is why the little nuances and differences, somewhat not so little, that we have with Bill Schuette, we've got to work through those. I've got some problems with Bill. But I'm going to tell you Bill Schuette is a friend of mine. And as a friend, I'm going to communicate with him the things that's affecting this country more than anything. The history of this country has been changed in the last 2 days. And Bill Schuette understands that. If we don't take Bill Schuette on as an ally here and work with the things that we have in common with an Attorney General who likely is going to be our next governor, If we don't do that, then we have failed our prodigy. We have failed those little ones I'm going to go to my family reunion and look at. I will not fail them in effort. I may fail them in something I don't achieve that I try to. It will not be because I didn't try. Bill Schuette, I had a conversation with him, and I sent him a letter. And I hoped he used some of it to argue, but if he did, it didn't work. That compelled speech, when a gay couple comes to my cake factory and says to me, bake me a cake and put gay pride on it, and put whatever my message is on it. Now, constitutionally, I have contracted with the state to do business. I have to bake them a cake, folks. But I don't have to be compelled to give their message. That is compelled speech, which violates my First Amendment right. It is the ground that can be common to the solution across America. But it didn't carry the day with John Roberts' decision. Well, John Roberts actually on the gay issue, the gay marriage issue, was on the right side. But whether he was or he wasn't, he knew that it was going to pass. Now, you know what? I gained a whole lot of respect for Anton Scalia. I respected him before, but his dissent, his dissent speech was amazing. He gave more passion than I ever had in his dissent on the bill passage or the decision yesterday. Joe?
Dennis, earlier you were stealing Therone's line. He is always saying, no one else is talking about this. And
you know what else Therone's always saying? That Tea Parties ought to meet every week. Nobody's doing it. That's what he says.
And the other day, he was on the Let's Ban the Rebel Flag bandwagon with everybody else, and I called in and pointed out that wouldn't even be a topic of discussion if that 21-year-old psychopath hadn't posted a picture of himself next to that flag. And by anybody defending it, that does not make them a racist.
Rush Limbaugh was right about it. They're not after that flag, they're after the American flag.
That's right. That's right. That's different.
Darlene?
I agree with you about Ted Cruz, always for him, but 2 days ago, Mark Levin interviewed Ted Cruz. I don't know if anybody heard it, but I didn't quite understand what he was trying to say, like he's saying now he's voting no for something, but I didn't quite understand it.
Well,
2 days ago.
Let me try to clear it up because he now has done absolution. That's generally a Catholic term, and I'm a Baptist, so I don't quite understand, but I do. The analogy is this: I did wrong, and I'm going to do right now so that it makes it all better. But it isn't absolution. Because what Ted Cruz did is allowed that vote to take place. He could have blocked it and committed. He knew that fast track was going to yield a 51 vote if the treaty ever comes to the Senate. To give advice and consent now only takes 51 votes. It isn't that his vote the other day only took 51 votes. That wasn't what fast track affected. But what fast track affects is the vote when the treaty comes to the Senate and it goes up or down, no amendments, then it only takes 51 votes to pass it. And I got to tell you, folks, there is enough money to buy 51 votes from the complex that surrounds our military. And the thing that we really do need to understand, and I will continue to focus on it as long as I stand before this caucus, is the complex of military realizes one thing. There is no money in peace. I'm not a liberal, I'm a conservative. I'm a constitutional conservative. But if I find some common ground with people who are liberals, who don't want our men and women sent, it's for different reasons. It's just like Bernie Sanders and I disagree on fast track for different reasons. You know what? Nobody disagrees on fast track. Nobody's talking about their dissent on fast track. The Democrats are disagreeing with the treaty. See, they don't want, because they feel it's hands on steroids, which actually I sort of do too, but I don't know for sure. But it's not the treaty I'm talking about, folks. It's the authority that Ted Cruz gave the president through fast track. 51 votes when that bill comes to the Senate again. That is abhorrent to the Constitution, and we should all be so offended that only not 67. See, it was supposed to be bipartisan. Any treaty that affects this whole country is supposed to be 67 votes. That means that 67 of those states' senators out of 100 is going to be for that, so that it's going to more than likely be something we can live with. But they fast-tracked that right out. The Constitution is a slow track. It's a slow train. And you do not put a fast train on a slow track. That was my message with Ted and Nancy's excellent adventure. What they voted to do is put this fast train on a slow track, and it's going to be tragic. It cannot end well. The Republic has died, folks. Our problem is we didn't realize it. Today, yesterday, and with the vote that Ted Cruz did, it is confirmed to any clear-thinking people that we no longer have a republic. I am appalled by that, and I am miffed by the fact that folks aren't talking about it. Yes, I will go, because Linda always gives me good advice. Comes from the very pit of her heart. And that's what our caucus is. I don't care what anybody else is doing across the state, and I don't care how many numbers show up at this caucus. I know what motivates you. I know because it motivates me. And so I will go wherever I'm invited. I don't think I get invited. Because they don't want to hear this. Ted Cruz, our Tea Party darling, he violated the Constitution. This can't be. You're wrong, Dennis. Prove me wrong. And as you prove it, understand this. We're not talking about the treaty, because you don't know diddly squat about the treaty. So I'm not talking about the treaty either. I'm talking about the vote to change the threshold from 67 votes to 51 when that treaty comes back to the Senate after this president negotiates it. Really? I'm going to tell you something. This is only because I believe it that I say it. The reason Kerry Bentivolio was booted out of Washington by John Boehner, I believe this, is that he was not going to go along with this, and they needed that seat to be for it. I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. I couldn't figure it out for the longest time. You know, Kerry right now is almost bankrupt. They took his beehives.
I was going to pose that question to you, that if Kerry had still been in Congress,
Hang on. Wait for the mic. See, folks, here's the thing. If he puts this up on YouTube, they also want to hear your question, and they can't hear it unless you're on the mic.
Yeah, I wanted to pose that very question to you, Dennis, that if Kerry was still in Congress, do you think he would have backed Boehner up on this?
No, he would not have. There was not all the elbow.
That is his smoking buddy, after all. You know.
Yeah. Well, that was Boehner's tactic, and anybody coming into to Congress the first couple of weeks, they're going to accept that little bit of introduction leadership from the leader. John Boehner knew what he was doing, and he also found out very quickly who Kerry Bentivolio was. He was measuring Kerry Bentivolio up. That's what he was doing. Smoking buddies or not. Kerry Bentivolio is bankrupt, folks. They have literally torn him to pieces. It was some of his own administration doing. He made some mistakes, but they didn't have to be what they are. It's a very sad story. He will recover, because you know what? He's a fighter. Kerry Bentivolio has fought for this country in 3 wars. Kerry Bentivolio is a person that I think of when I say the pledge to that flag. I no longer will say pledge to the Republic. But when I say pledge to that flag, I think of people just like Kerry, and often Kerry specifically. Congressman Bentivolio. Tim?
I'm gonna briefly bring up a subject that they're attacking us on right now. And they no longer will allow clergy to pray at Arlington National Cemetery. And President Obama wants all the crosses out of Normandy. We gotta fight that too.
Okay, we have to fight that too. Yeah. But the way you fight it is you educate Christian America as to what's going on. Because Christian America, you're sleeping. As I talked to a good Christian in here the other day, told me that I'm going to allow God to take care of this. I said, really? He doesn't need your permission. And he will take care of it. But you better be on your knees praying he doesn't have to, because you won't. Because there's consequence to the way God takes care of things. You think you recognize this country now? We better pray every day that God's grace continues on this country and His mercy. And if we keep abandoning God the way that our Senate, the way that our Supreme Court, and the way that our government is becoming so secular, see, the history of this country isn't secular, folks. And we all know this. But as a country, we're suspending that disbelief. We're allowing it to happen. Tim's bringing this to me about the state Senate, saying that we're not going to educate people on the Constitution. Well, I bet that they're not going to educate people on the Mayflower Compact either. Where the very first sentence on that says, the reason they came here, and I'm going to be just as bold as I can on this, they were running from the Ottoman Empire. They were running from the effects of that. They came here, and the first clause of that contract that they signed, and I signed a contract, got a pretty good contract, got some work. But when you sign a contract, you better read the stipulations. The very first clause in that contract says this, and they're not going to teach this in the schools anymore. We endeavor this journey for the furtherance of Christianity. That was why they came, folks. Now, they can do all they want to in trying to diminish that. The country itself cannot be Christian, but the people of this country have a Christian heritage. And I'm tired, I'm absolutely tired of people saying that we have to be so inclusive as to include other cultures in the history of this country. No, I'm sorry. I'll include other cultures, even Islam. You know what? I talked to a moderate Muslim, and he actually made a lot of sense. But what really opened my eyes up is why he's here. He's here because he fears Islam. It's the reason he's here. He didn't say it in those words, but he spelled it out. He spelled it out. ISIS, Wahhabis, Al-Qaeda. America's the greatest country in the whole world. I can come here and I can live peacefully, worship my God. He's here because over there he dies. He said it. He said it. And the thing about moderate Muslims, may their God bless them. My God will not, because they call my God's son a liar. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. And I had this discussion with Mohadi, very nice person, very, very good conversation. I'm going to have some more conversation with them. First pillar of their faith calls for the oneness of God, that God has no partners, that Jesus is only a prophet. It doesn't go on to say that Jesus is only a prophet. But you have to understand, folks, that the history of this country was formed by Christianity. Christianity means that I and my Father are one. That is our faith. If you're going to tell me that your caliphate that we're ushering in through the president's brotherhood, that he supports, and that just about every policy that he's supporting over there, we're ushering in a caliphate. If you're going to tell me that that caliphate is going to tell me that if I want to continue my faith in Christianity, that I have to pay tribute to it? Now I asked Mahadi about that. He says, well, I have to pay it too. Initially, that made sense to me. He had to pay it too. Well, that sounds being equal. No, this is my country.